Episode 4 seems to pick right up where episode 3 left off. In the preview trailer, we see Daenerys rallying her forces as well as Winterfell being rebuilt. And with only 3 episodes remaining of this series, I can guarantee you that episode 4 is likely going to be just as wild of a ride as episode 3. In this video, I'm going to discuss what exactly may go down in Game of Thrones Season 8 episode 4, as well as several things I noticed from the episode 4 preview trailer. Now, we'll probably mention a few leaks in this video, so as always, here's your sign and let's begin. Now before we get started, please slap a like on this video as the like goal is going to be 4,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then, this is the most important part, make sure you have your notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a video. Long night! Now after the massive fan blowback from Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 3, I'm going to begin this video with a bit of a rant. First things first, every single person, whether you're a fan of this show or you watch it just to hate on it, you are entitled to your own opinion. The problem is, a lot of people online want to force their opinion down your throats, and they think that what they're saying is the rule of God, when in all actuality, that's just their opinion. Most of these people commenting about how the show was terrible do not have any experience in Hollywood whatsoever. They're not even writers. Some people may take that as me talking down upon them, but the reason why I have to remind everyone of this is if you don't have experience doing something, it's really hard to formulate a solid opinion on something that's so complex and involves so many different things going into it that we really don't know what it is unless we're there day to day working on the set. Since we basically just have to wait for HBO to upload the new Game of Thrones episode every week, we are considered fans, and as a fan, you're allowed and entitled to your own opinion. If you watch my videos, you're probably like, this guy's just a pure fanboy and he never has an issue with anything ever, especially with Game of Thrones. Well, that's not true. When I have issues with episodes, I let it be known in my video breakdown. Now, this whole blowback from episode 3 reminds me of The Last Jedi. There were a lot of people that enjoyed that film, but I was one of the people who didn't. And without going into too much detail of why I didn't enjoy that film, my main reason with it is it just disposed of everything that we knew and loved about Star Wars. You know, Luke tossing his lightsaber behind him when that was built up to be this great moment, and then the whole casino scene that took up way too much time in the movie were, in my opinion, legitimate flaws that ruined this installment in the Star Wars franchise, and that's sort of what the blowback is from episode 3. Most people are disappointed in the fact of the way that the Night King ended, but the difference with Game of Thrones and with Star Wars is that in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, if you read the novels, if you watch George R. R. Martin's interviews, this man loves to blow tropes out their asshole. Meaning that if you expect some sort of prophecy to be fulfilled and, you know, some character to have some mysterious background, and that means they're gonna lead up to this great insane destiny and arc that's just gonna be so awesome, and then you turn the page and that character dies. That's it. You never see them again. This is what happened to Jon Snow in the books. As of right now, he's yet to be brought back, and yes, a lot of people think that he will be resurrected. There's also a very strong chance that he doesn't come back at all. What makes this show and these novels so great is you learn to expect the unexpected. Nothing is guaranteed and nothing is certain. And the difference between The Long Night, Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 3, and The Last Jedi is that we expect these sort of plot twists with Game of Thrones. We don't expect it with Star Wars. So when they go against the grain and just try to create some new version of a formula that we've seen 1,000 times, then everyone got mad. And now you see, here's the thing. HBO has been telling us all along. Literally, Dan and Dave did like 15 interviews before Season 8 even came out and said, you know, everyone's wondering about what the great mystery is in the Night King, and they've stated that they enjoy the idea that there's nothing special about him. He was created to destroy. He was literally the embodiment of death, and that's what he's gonna do in Game of Thrones. And I'll be honest, when I first heard that from Dan and Dave, my reaction to it was, that's stupid. We've been led to believe, especially in the books, that the Night King, we know that he's not the Night's King, but everyone has the idea that he's got the similar backstory and a similar origin. That's not the case. But when I first heard that this was the route they were going to be taking with the Night King, like I just said, I thought it was stupid until I gave it a bit more thought. They've already done that deep down human heart in conflict with itself type of evil. If that's what they did with the Night King, that would be extremely played out. Ramsay, Joffrey, Tywin, Littlefinger, Walder Frey, Cersei, these are all villains from Game of Thrones that have that similar backstory. If you look at the story from their point of view, you might see things differently, and the actions they take may seemingly sometimes seem a little bit justified. I guess what I'm getting at here is everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and my personal opinion is that we get to have our cake and eat it too. You can't successfully 100% adapt a novel into a movie because it was written to be a novel, especially in A Song of Ice and Fire. George R.R. Martin literally wrote these books so that they are unadaptable. So now when they're being adapted into 8 seasons of a TV show that breaks records every single time an episode drops, there's going to be a large chunk of the fan base who came from the A Song of Ice and Fire reader base that will be disappointed in the story. It's impossible to please everyone, especially when something is as deeply loved and appreciated as A Song of Ice and Fire. Just take solace in the fact that Winds of Winter will be here before you know it, and we're gonna get everything we ever wanted and didn't want in the books. Okay, I feel like I got everything off of my head. Let's move on to actually what's going to go down in episode 4. Now, the very first thing I noticed from this teaser trailer is that it appears as though episode 4 is going to start with the burning of the dead. Maybe there's still some sort of a threat from the Night King and he isn't truly gone. If there is some sort of looming threat of death, and Bran will likely know about this, but I feel like the fact that they're starting off by burning the dead, there's still some looming threat that maybe the Night King isn't defeated. And you know what? I'm gonna laugh my ass off if all these people are hating on episode 3, and then the Night King comes back in like episode 5 or 6 and just makes a sudden reappearance, and we get more about his backstory, something a little bit more satisfying. And you know, giving you a little bit of a spoiler warning, even though it's likely horseshit, I was sent a leak that stated that the only way to defeat the Night King will be to go north of the wall and destroy the place where he was created. This person mentioned that the Night King will make a sudden reappearance right in the middle of the battle for King's Landing, or as Danny puts it in this trailer, the final war. Now, another thing I noticed from this teaser that may sort of corroborate that leak is we see Jon Snow leaving on horseback alone. Now, we don't really get to see a clear shot of who all is leaving with him, but if you'll notice, there's Gilly over to the right, so maybe Sam is venturing with him. In that leak that I was sent, Sam, Jon Snow, and Daenerys all have to venture north of the wall in order to destroy the altar of winter. The reason why Sam goes is because there's some sort of ritual that has to be done. Now, what's interesting here though is that in that leak, Daenerys, Jon Snow, and Sam all left on the back of one of Daenerys' dragons. If you'll notice here, Jon's leaving on horseback, and that means that Daenerys is likely not going with him. He's not going to be flying a dragon, and she's probably preparing for her war to take the Iron Throne. Whatever mission Jon is about to embark on, I personally feel as though it's a mission of peace. Jon could likely be going down to King's Landing to maybe try to convince Cersei to not have the battle with Daenerys. Now, I know that seems a little bit far-fetched, but we weren't shown images of Cersei and Jon Snow meeting up at some point during the filming season for season 8. And unless they were trolling us, this meeting has to happen at some point within the next few episodes. Now, we have to remember that Winterfell was just destroyed and Jon Snow nearly lost everyone close to him. The fact that he's already leaving in the very next episode makes me think that whatever he's going to go do is of a dire importance. Now, I could just be misreading this whole situation and Jon is just taking off with Daenerys and just riding on horseback instead of riding on Rhaegal because Rhaegal could potentially still be wounded. We do see a shot of him in the trailer with holes in his wings. I did see a few people commenting on my episode 3 breakdown, speaking of which you can check out the link down below in the description and go watch that for yourself, but a lot of people were wondering if Rhaegal and Ghost actually survived the battle, and I'll let you know right now, they did! And you know, just sort of speaking of death count there, the amount of people that we lost in episode 3 was seemingly small, but we have to remember that we've been told to expect death on this show, so I would not be surprised if we still lose a bit more when Daenerys and Cersei finally have their showdown. And just sort of touching back on something that I said earlier during my rant, one thing that we do expect with this show is death, and I think that's another reason why people were a little bit disappointed with the episode. Nearly every single main character died, but you all have to remind yourselves that there's still 4 episodes left, and traditionally, the most death occurs in the second to last episode of the season. So that means episode 5, you better get those Kleenex ready for a number of reasons. And another thing I noticed for the episode 4 preview is that if you look right up here, this appears to be some sort of trap that Cersei is laying for Daenerys. Now, all the way back in episode 1, Qyburn told Bronn that Cersei has a very special plan for Daenerys. So I'm pretty sure whatever is going on in these scenes in King's Landing is going to be pretty crucial for Daenerys to get through. Most of her army was just wiped out, so I'm pretty sure she's going to be relying on her dragons heavily during the invasion of King's Landing. And as a massive Daenerys fan, this makes me super worried for her. The dragons are definitely definitely vulnerable, and the fact that Qyburn helped create a scorpion that was able to wound one of the dragons lets me know that now, with all this time in idle hands, he's created several torturous devices. I wouldn't be surprised if something has a chain attached to it so that when it strikes the dragon, it can then drag it to the ground. I've actually seen photos of the aftermath of the battle at King's Landing, and it looks insane. Literally everything is destroyed. It actually looks a little bit more destroyed than the Winterfell set. One of the biggest reasons why we have to prepare ourselves for upcoming death is that characters do have plot armor unless they're pit against other main characters. Cersei has just as thick plot armor as Jon Snow and Daenerys. So the three of them all going head to head, they're pretty much on a base scale level, meaning any one of them could die at any moment, especially since there's no chance to bring anyone back. As far as we know, the last person who was capable of resurrection on the TV show stripped down to her skibbies and turned into a bag of dust. So that means that anyone who does die, their death is going to be permanent. Now we have to remind ourselves that Cersei will likely be taken out in one way or another by the end of this series, but she's not going down without a fight, and in my opinion, that equals death for either Jon Snow or Daenerys, or death to anyone that's close to them, dragons and direwolves included. Now, one thing that has been heavily theorized throughout this Game of Thrones Season 8 offseason, or while the show was being filmed, everyone thought that there's a chance that Sansa at some point could get kidnapped. Now, I don't exactly know where the origins of this theory came from, but it was included in a lot of the leaks that people had sent to me. Now, with Jon Snow, Daenerys, and pretty much the majority of their army leaving Winterfell, all of Jon Snow's family who's in the north is somewhat unprotected. Unless they travel with him, they're not guaranteed safety. And since Cersei is known to be a treacherous, treasonous cunt, then I'm pretty sure she's got some sort of backup plan that may involve the Golden Company sneaking to Winterfell after Jon and Daenerys and their forces is left, and maybe kidnapping Sansa or Arya as some sort of a bargaining chip when the final showdown happens between Jon Snow, Daenerys, and Cersei. Maybe the images of Jon meeting with Cersei and seemingly bending the knee is all in order or part of his plan so that he could get his sibling or whoever Cersei has hostage back into his possession. And the last thing that I want to address in this video that may pop up in Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 4 is Daenerys' pregnancy. Now, we all thought that last season, when Jon banged her on the boat, there was going to be a boat sex baby from that union. Now, all 3 episodes that we've seen this season hasn't hinted about the fact of that in any sort of way. We haven't really seen Maester Woken at all, and in my opinion, he's the one in Winterfell who would be capable of telling Daenerys she's pregnant. I feel like if Dany was going to get pregnant this season, it would have been perfect to have Melisandre sort of relay a message. Maybe she could yell out, "You're fighting for your baby," or something like that. But nope, it didn't happen. What this all could mean, and something that we have to realize, is that maybe Daenerys was right when she said that she could never get pregnant again. Jon Snow is technically of the undead, so we don't even know if his floaters actually work. Wait. Let me rephrase that. We don't know if his swimmers are actually floaters. And judging from the past direction of the show, it may be too much to have both Jon Snow and Daenerys live, maybe one of the dragons, and then they also get a child. That's a little bit too happy. I mean, I want them to have a child, so that way the future of the Seven Kingdoms has an heir by the end of this series. I just don't know how likely it is to happen. You all let me know how likely it is that Daenerys will have a child by the end of this series, down below in the comments section. And you know what? Since we're doing pretty well on time for this video, I'm gonna go ahead and mention my one gripe with Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 3, and that is that, was this episode filmed in my grandma's dusty-ass attic from her house in Philadelphia that was built in the 1920s? I mean, come on, guys. This looks like someone threw piles of dust in front of the camera right before they shot all these. Like I get it. I know why they did it. They, can keep down on cost because everything is so blurry. They don't have to really put too much into attention to detail, and it just sort of adds more of this dramatic effect to have smoke, smog, fog, and ashes all over the place. That does add for a pretty cool aesthetic, but it was literally impossible to see what was going on during the actual Dance of the Dragons. In my opinion, that was one of the most crucial moments, and we didn't really know who was who. The dragons were clearly not color graded for this gray-ass dark background, and for that, it made it hard to see. My thumbnails are usually the shortest part of my video making process, and the thumbnail that I had to make for episode 3 took me about an hour and a half. And with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be 4,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then make sure you have your notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a video. Long night. Super special shout out to every single person watching, and a super special shout out to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. I want to thank you all again so much for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunts Reviews.